Okay, we're going to go ahead and review chapters 9 and 10 for the final exam. Chapter 9, the first type of questions that are going to be on your exam are evaluate the expressions. And remember, these are the exact instructions that will be on your test, okay? All they want you to do here is the main thing you need to remember about radical signs is I need to find out what the square root is. If it has a negative sign on the outside, I keep that negative sign in my answer. I have to have it in my answer. Then I just find the square root of 64, which is 8. So I know that what they were asking me for was the negative square root of 64. So that would be negative 8. Remember, to every square root, there is two answers, a positive and a negative. So when they have the negative sign already, they're telling you, I just want one answer. Okay, so the next problem we have the square root of 25. Like I just said, to every square root answer, there is two possible answers, a positive and a negative. When they do not specify which one they want, you have to give both. So I know I need my positive and negative sign. What's the square root of 25? 5. So that would be my answer there. And then on these, you can just plug it in your calculator. I mean, I'm not going to look for any work. You don't need to show upside down division because they're exact square roots. Okay, the next type of problem where you are going to have to show work on these because they are going to take some different steps to find the answer. What they want us to do is they want us to solve the equation for the variable. Okay, what do I need to do first to get that variable by itself, Janelle? Divide by 5. Very good. I cannot take the square root yet until I get that x squared by itself. X squared equals 25. Now what would I do? Square root it. Very good. I've got to get that 2 to go away, or that squared to go away. And whatever I do to one side, I got to do the other. So x is equal, remember, every square root answer has, or every square root problem has two answers, which is positive and negative 5. Okay, so let's look at the next one. What should I do first on this problem? Subtract 25. Very good. You solve it just like you would a regular equation. 2x squared equals 12. Then I divide by 2, and I get x squared is equal to 6. Now I take the square root of both sides. Is there an exact square root to 6? No, there's not. So I just put positive, negative, square root of 6. Now, if that was a number that you would need to simplify underneath the radical, you would need to do that, okay? And again, it's okay to plug it in your calculator and let your calculator simplify it, but it does need to be simplified if at all possible. Okay, so the next problem that we have, write the quadratic formula. This is an exact test question. So, I had a lot of you, I remember, that were trying to figure out the quadratic formula. It is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c over 2a. Okay, that's the quadratic formula. Now, the quadratic formula is used when I have an equation that looks like this. Ax squared plus bx plus c. I had a lot of people writing this as your quadratic formula. That is not your quadratic formula. That's how I know what I can plug in for each of these variables. Okay? I found out a is in front of x squared, b is in front of x, c is the number by itself. The discriminant is just part of my quadratic formula, and it's underneath the radical sign. But the radical sign is not part of the discriminant. It is just b squared minus 4ac. Okay? You will have to write these on your final exam. They are actual questions. Okay, so now in this next problem here, they want me to use the quadratic formula to solve. Okay, so first of all, before I do anything, I want to label A, B, and C. What is A in this equation? 5. What is B? What kind of 20? Negative 20. Very good. Do not forget the sign. And what is C? Negative 60. Very good. Those signs are very important. Now, I go to plug it into my formula. X equals negative b. But what if b is already negative? Make it a positive. Plus or minus the square root of b squared. So I do negative 20 squared minus 4 times a, which is 5, and c, which is negative 60. That negative sign is very important. Over 2 times a, which is 5. Okay? So I get x equals 20 plus or minus. And what I want to do is I want to go ahead and solve everything underneath the square root sign. What is negative 20 times negative 20? Positive 400. Okay? What's negative 4, because that sign is important, times 5? Negative 20. What's negative 20 times negative 60? Positive 1200. Okay? Then over 2 times 5, which is 10. Again, I'm still trying to solve everything underneath the radical. 400 plus 1200 is 1600 over 10. That's a 0. Okay? What is the square root of 1600? 40 over 10. Okay, now I've actually found the square root. So this is the part where I break it into two different problems. X equals 20 plus 40 over 10, and x equals 20 minus 40 over 10. Because this sign right here tells me I have two different problems. Okay, so 20 plus 40 is 60 over 10. What's 60 over 10? 6, very good. All right, 20 minus 40, which is negative 20 over 10. What's negative 20 over 10? Negative 2. So you will get two answers for your quadratic formula problem. Okay? All right, chapter 10. Now we're on to chapter 10. And they want us to find the product. They want us to find the product by using multiplication. So I've got two options for multiplication. I can either FOIL or I can do distributive property. Remember, I can only FOIL when I have 4 terms. Look at this problem. Do I have 4 terms? No, I have 5. So that means I automatically know I need to use distributive property. So I distribute this x to everything. Then I'm going to distribute the negative 1 to everything. Okay? Once I do that, I'm going to get a really long amount of terms. Okay? I just combine like terms. So let's start off by distributing the x. X times 5 is 5x. X times 10x is 10x squared. 2x times x is 2x cubed. Because remember, you count up how many x's you have, and that's how many, that's what exponent you should have. All right, now let's distribute the negative 1. And I'm just going to write it right beside it. Negative 1 times 5 is negative 5. Negative 1 times 10x is negative 10x. Negative 1 times 2x squared is negative 2x squared. All right? Now just combine like terms. And remember, I want to start with my largest exponent first. So I look for that, which is 2x cubed. I don't see any like terms for 2x cubed, so I go ahead and write it. Now my second largest exponent is x squared. I look for a like term and I find it. So I have 10x squared minus 2x squared, which is 8x squared. And again, I like to cross mine off once I get finished just so I know I've taken care of it. They're done. Now I have the next one, 5x and negative 10x, which is going to give me negative 5x. Cancel out. And then my last term that I have is negative 5, and I see that it does not have any like terms. So this is my final answer. There's nothing left I can do. I've combined all like terms, and that is what I get. Now this next problem here, I count up how many terms I have. What can I use this time? FOIL, very good. So first, 5x times 2x, which is 10x squared. Outer, 5x times negative 5, which is negative 25x. Inner, which is 2 times 2x, which is 4x. And last, 2 times negative 5, which is negative 10. Go ahead and combine like terms. 10x squared minus 21x minus 10. And that is my final answer because I've combined all like terms and there's nothing else that I can do. Okay? This next problem is they want us to solve. You do not use FOIL on this problem. Okay? They just want you to solve for x. So it's much simpler than that. All I need to do in order to solve for x is to separate each of these equations and make them equal to 0. So I have 5x plus 9 equals 0, and x plus 2 equals 0. And then I just solve for x. So I subtract 9 on both sides. 5x equals negative 9. Divide by 5. And I get x equals negative 9 over 5. Now, if you wanted to, you could make that negative 1 and 4 over 5. That's fine, but you don't have to. All right, on this next one, all I need to do is subtract 2 to both sides, and I get x equals negative 2. Remember, on these problems, however many variables you have should be how many answers you have. So if I have 3 x's, I should have 3 answers. If I have 2 x's, I should have 2 answers. If I have 1 x, I should have 1 answer, okay? Factoring. Now, this is where a lot of people, you looked at it and you went, I do not remember how to factor, okay? Here is your refresher. Remember, whenever there is no number seen in front of x squared, I can do it the very short, quick way. So all I need to do is I need to list the factors of 16, which are 1 times 16, 2 times 8, and 4 times 4. Okay? Which one of these are going to add, because remember this sign right here tells me if they need to add or subtract to give me 8. 4 and 4, okay? They're going to add together to give me 8. So this is all I need to do now is I write my 2 parentheses. What always goes in front? X, then 4 and 4. Now, because this is a positive, I know my signs have either got to be positive, positive, or minus, minus. And I look to this sign right here to tell me. That is a plus, so that means my signs are plus, plus. And this is my final answer. Now, the one below it is a little bit different because I have a number now in front of x squared. So I can't use the exact same method. What I need to do is I need to multiply a times c. Remember, a is the term in front of x squared, c is the term by itself. So 2 times 5, which is 10, and now I list the factors of 10. 1 times 10 and 2 times 5. Which ones are going to add together to give me 11? 1 and 10. Now, this is where it differs. I cannot just write my answer. I have to rewrite my original problem, which is 2x squared. Then instead of plugging in negative 11x, I plug in my 2 factors. Now, first of all, before I can plug in those factors, let's figure out what signs are those factors going to have. Minus, minus. Very good, because this is a plus. I know it's either got to be plus, plus, or minus, minus. And I look to this sign to find out. So I'm going to do minus 1x, minus 10x, plus 5. So if you see, I wrote the exact original problem, except for I took out the negative 11x and I plugged in negative 1x and negative 10. Now, it does not matter what order you plug in those variables. You could do 2x squared minus 10x minus 1 plus 5, and you're still going to get the same answer. Now I do factor by grouping. So you put parentheses around the first 2 and around the last 2, and I take out the greatest common factor. What's the greatest common factor for a number for 2 and 1? 1. And then how many x's can I take out? 1. So I'm left with x in the first one. I'm sorry, not x. 2x in the first one. And I'm left with negative 1 in the second, because negative 1 divided by 1 is negative 1. Okay? What can I take out of this second set of parentheses? What kind of 5? Negative 5. Very good. Remember, whatever that sign is of the first term is the sign that you have to take out. So I take out a negative 5. What's negative 10 divided by negative 5? 2. And I'm left with my x. What's positive 5 divided by negative 5? Negative 1. Now, all you do is I group together this term and this term, and then I just write what's in parentheses once. So my answer is going to be 1x minus 5 times 2x minus 1. So those are a little more in depth. They take a little more time, but you still should get the same type of answer. All right. Factor the expression. These are the last two examples that we're going to do. Factor the expression completely. On your test and on your review sheet, it says, hint, take out the greatest common factor. You have to do that first before this makes any sense at all, okay? So, what is the greatest common factor of 5, 5, and 30? 5. All right, now I look at the x's that I have. X to the third, x squared, and just 1x. How many x's can I take out? 1. You always look for the smallest exponent, which is 1, and that's how many you can take out. Okay? So I take out 5x. That's my greatest common factor. Now what I do is I rewrite this totally, dividing everything by 5 and subtracting each exponent by x. So 5 divided by 5 is 1. I don't need to write that 1 there. And so if I had 3 x's and I took out 1, I'm left with x squared. You can write the 1 in front of it, but you don't have to. 5 divided by 5 is 1. If I had 2 x's, I took 1 out, I'm left with 1. 30 divided by 5 is 6. If I had 1 x and I took it out, I'm left with none. So this is what I have in parentheses. Now I need to go ahead and factor what I have left in parentheses. So I leave my 5x here. That greatest common factor has to stay with your answer. And I list the factors of 6. I forgot to tell you, this was supposed to be a minus sign. So it's supposed to be minus 6. Okay, it's supposed to be minus 6. So let's list the factors of 6. 1 times 6 and 2 times 3. Which ones subtract to give me 1? 2 and 3. Okay? So remember, since there's no number in front of x squared, I could just do the easy way of factoring. X and x, 2 and 3. Now, which number needs to get which sign? Because this is a minus sign here, I know one of these signs needs to be positive and one needs to be negative. 3 is positive, 2 is negative. Because this sign right here determines that the largest sign, or the largest number gets that sign. So the 3 gets the positive. And this is my final answer. Now, factor by grouping. Everybody gets confused on factor by grouping, but you already know how to do it, okay? This is just, remember whenever we do something like 2x squared plus 10x plus 5 or whatever, you know how we multiply these together and then we write the 4 terms once I found it? That's exactly what this is. So now, all I'm going to do is I just start off with that step. Put parentheses around these two. I do not FOIL these. I've got to take out the greatest common factor. Okay, if I have 4 b's and 3 b's, how many can I take out? 3. Remember, always look for the smallest exponent. So if I had 4 and I took 3 out, I'm left with 1. Now what happens here? Because I had 3 and I took 3 out. So what am I left with? A 1. Remember, anytime you take everything out, you're always left with a 1. Now, what's the greatest common factor of negative 6b and negative 6? Negative 6. Very good. So I'm left with b plus 1. Now I can just write my answer. B cubed minus 6 times b plus 1. And that is my final answer.